everybody. Welcome to Common Censored. I'm Lee Camp, joined by Eleanor Goldfield.
Hello, hello.
This is the show where we talk censored stories and people, sensible solutions, and common ground movements to fight and build.
And sometimes other stuff.
And this week we got a lot of, I was going to say a lot of good stuff. I don't know if these are good. This is annoying, to say the least.
Yeah, I don't know that we should ever really say good stuff. That's kind of false advertising.
A lot of interesting stuff.
Yeah, I guess that's somehow more accurate.
Yeah, a lot's been going on. Some of it, we've covered Afghanistan a few times. I covered it on Redacted tonight, so feel free to go back and check those out. But this week we want to get into, abortion being rocked across the country, or a woman's right to choose.
So basically, folks at this point will be aware of the Texas abortion law that was passed, and details like the fact that abortion is illegal after 6 weeks, even when it comes to incest and rape. So technically, a father could rape his daughter, and then if she tried to get an abortion, turn her in for a $10,000 bounty. And no,
right.
I'm not kidding. That's actually how that works.
It's fucking crazy. Yeah, for those who don't know, they, rather than just say abortion's illegal because they knew that would get overturned, they created a law that tries to create headhunters who run around trying to find out who had abortions. And if you turn them in, you get your legal fees for suing them, and you could get $10,000. So, yeah.
Well, right, and it turns the enforcement of a law over to people. So basically, the mob, as I'm not saying that the police are any better, but it basically turns this into mob rule in Texas. And not only that, but those who, quote unquote, assist someone in getting an abortion. So if you take a Lyft or an Uber to your appointment, those people can then be fined as well. And interestingly enough, granted, I think Lyft and Uber are fucking atrocious capitalist employers. They did, however, highlight and release press releases saying that they would pay 100% of any legal fees associated with this kind of bounty if any of their drivers found themselves on the ass end of it, so to speak.
Yeah.
So,
well, they are the good guys.
Right. So, and if you want to know more of the nitty gritty, there's plenty of places to look that up. I kind of wanted to share some information about abortion bans in general, but then also where to find and get help and support. Because I think it's important in these moments to not only look at, counter suing and all of this other stuff, which I think is very important. But in the here and now, how can people who need reproductive health care access it in this new, incredibly restrictive climate? So I want to share some of that. But first, I want to share, so this might seem like, the first and the worst of the abortion bans in 2021, and it certainly seems to be the latter, but it's not at all the first. In fact, more abortion restrictions have been enacted in 2021 than any year since Roe v. Wade was decided in 1973. So there's a feather in your cap.
Thanks Democrats for putting forward so many Democrats who are anti-choice across the country, and in many places that is one of the key things that's allowing all these to go through.
Well, and to that point, I think it's also important to highlight something. Roe v. Wade could have been enshrined into law by the Democrats at any time that they had a majority in the past 40 years. But they didn't want to do that because it's a lot more convenient for their, political theater to let it hang in the balance and to, use it kind of as a pawn in order to fundraise and hold it over people as a constant threat of, this is what happens if you don't have us. So really the Democrats can go fuck themselves, once again because of this bullshit, because it's not like the Republicans are the only ones who are pushing to overturn abortion. The Democrats aren't pushing to protect abortion and reproductive rights. So I think it's really important to highlight that, because this is already, of course, being used as a political pawn by Democrats to point out, hey, this is why you need us. Well, fuck you. Why didn't you make sure that this was law in any of the moments that you've had a majority in the past 40 years, you fucking assholes?
Yeah, there's many reasons that this wouldn't have happened if the Democrats actually had any kind of spine, any kind of ability to stand up, any kind of cojones or vaginas. Right now, Joe Biden could, and his administration could, end the filibuster and put something through that protects Roe v. Wade. They could change the number of Supreme Court justices, because 9 is not always the number of Supreme Court justices. We've just grown accustomed to that in the past, couple generations. And of course, the Supreme Court is a anti-democratic, oligarchic shit show. But beyond all of that, I just wanted to throw in here before we get to the rest that and a shout out to my friends over at The Dollop, which is a cool podcast. They always do history, but they don't always do politics. But in this one, they did basically the history of the Clarence Thomas hearings. And the details are, I realized that some of our listeners were alive during it, and they're like, yeah, I remember every day of it. But for many people right now, coming of age right now, they don't understand what a fucking horrible clusterfuck this was. And it was overseen by Joe Biden. And in this hour they spend on it, they play clips from the hearings, and it's fucking incredible. I mean, for one thing, Anita Hill came forward to them, and they were going to basically cover her up. But then Joe Biden, overseeing the hearings, says, well, I just want to, before we go forward, I want to say something, paraphrasing, something like, if it comes down to a matter of character, well, I can vouch for Clarence Thomas's character. And so then some reporters, I guess there were some that actually gave a shit back then, some reporters were like, wait, why did he say that? What character stuff is he talking about? So they start digging, and they then find out about Anita Hill. So then it comes forward because Joe Biden was trying to help cover it up. And so then they obviously hear from Anita Hill, who was ritually sexually harassed, serially sexually harassed by Clarence Thomas for years. And there's the best. So, and then this group of old white men just treats her like shit, including many Democrats. The Democrats were running the Senate by 50. They had 57 votes, and they were running the Senate. And one of the quotes is this Democrat who's like, Miss Hill, I'm just trying to understand here, what it is about you that would, make you come up with these fantasies. Is it that you were upset about being turned down by Mr. Thomas? Is it that you're looking to sell a book? What is it about you? It is the most disgusting shit you've ever seen. And of course, if Anita Hill had been heard properly and these guys weren't fucking awful old white sociopaths, Clarence Thomas would not be on the court right now. Roe v. Wade would likely be far better off.
Yeah, no, I think, also, Joe Biden is a Democrat. And after the fact, of course, this was when he was, I believe this was before the election, when these hearings came up, when the Anita Hill hearings came up. His response was, well, I wish I could have done something I wish I could have done more. It's like, motherfucker, you were running the goddamn hearings. That's literally like saying, as president, I wish I could do something. Like you have, which is, of course, what he's doing. But yeah, that whole trying to cover it up and then uncovering it, that's such a metaphor for his falling up the stairs of life, which he's done literally as well. Yeah, we keep uplifting the most the most sad, mediocre old white dudes as if that's the best that our country can do. And it's it's remarkable. Yeah. And here we are. And this is why, in 2021, we have the most abortion restrictions that have ever been passed since 1973. So, yeah.
This is how you end up with The Handmaid's Tale becoming reality.
Yeah, exactly. So just real quick, I wanted to share that, these 6-week bans, which you have in Texas, most people don't know that they're pregnant by 6 weeks. I personally, who had an abortion, roughly, 10 years ago, I didn't know at 6 weeks because I've always had irregular periods. So at 6 weeks, I was like, this is, this feels a bit long, but, whatever. Going about my life. And so the idea of making it...
That burger is really kicking inside me.
No, Lee, don't give false information. You don't feel kicks until week 24.
I know.
So
listen, sometimes you got to go for the joke.
Well, maybe not in that moment. So these 6-week bans are at play in not just Texas, but in South Carolina, Idaho, and Oklahoma. What's called a near total abortion ban is something that bans abortion at any point in pregnancy, except when the patient's life is endangered. So there's yet another loophole. Basically, these states, of which it's Oklahoma and West Virginia, they basically say, well, we're not going against Roe v. Wade because it's still legal. It just has to be you're going to die unless you have this abortion. So it's kind of like slavery, it's technically legal unless you're in jail, in which case it's not. So technically, it's one of those things. And
yeah, it'd be like you can't have segregated schools. And they were like, we don't have segregated schools, but if black kids come to this school, we're going to beat the shit out of them. You're like, right. That's still a segregated, you put that into law, that's still a segregated school.
Yeah. So it's creating these loopholes that, again, could be avoided if this were made into a very clear-cut law. But again, that's not going to happen because it's a lot more fun to play political theater with people's health and lives. There are medication abortion restrictions, which is a restriction on the medication that you take for an abortion as opposed to going into an actual clinic or, into getting a surgical abortion. I'm not sure if that's the correct term for it. But and this also includes bans on telehealth options. So basically there are, telehealth providers that can talk to you about your options, that can, order meds for you, et cetera, et cetera. That's banned in Arizona, Arkansas, Indiana, Montana, Ohio, Oklahoma, South Dakota, and West Virginia.
They banned people on the telephone just helping you out?
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Well, it's kind of like, there are certain clinics, God, I can't remember where they were, but I believe it was in this documentary called Trapped that I watched, which is about reproductive rights. And at one point they were saying that there are clinics that are privately owned. Of course, because I'd say there are. Most of them are. The fuck am I talking about?
Most health in America, you have to find some billionaire who wants to help you out.
Right. And so a lot of these are backed by, especially in the South, you've got the Baptist fucking women's clinic or whatever the fuck, which is basically where they teach you how to cross your legs really hard. And
even after being pregnant, just, I think, have you tried crossing them harder though? But have you tried tying something around the knees? Because I think that should make a difference. Ma'am, have you tried stacking books on your legs?
Oh, that sounds kind of kinky. But so one of the things that these clinics didn't allow was even mentioning that abortions were an option. So if a woman came in, right, totally distraught, holy shit, I can't have this child, they weren't even allowed to mention that.
Or having been raped.
Right. Yeah. they can talk about like, oh, you can give it up for adoption. You can, suck it up and be a mom. But they're not allowed to say, hey, there's this thing that's legal and that that you have the option of accessing. They're not allowed to say that.
Right. They're like, here are the options open to you. Stephen, George. Like, you're just listing names. Yeah, those are the options. These are the name options. And really, they're all the options we have for you today.
Also, Jesus. So then...
I don't get why the Hispanics get to name all their kids Jesus, and we don't have a bunch of little American Jesuses running around. I mean, funny Hispanic Americans, but little white waspy Jesus is running around.
I don't think there's anything that says you can't. I just think it's, you're condemning your child if you do that.
I guess there are a lot of Christophers.
That's true. So, I feel like it's not that worse. Common, but there are Abrahams and
who?
There are Moseses. Okay.
Oh, come on. They don't hold a candle to the big Messiah man.
Well, speaking from a Jewish perspective, Jesus was just a Jewish kid.
Speaking from an atheist perspective, they were all just kids.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. But, even coming from a different angle of the monotheistic pantheon, Jesus was just a guy.
But I'm now realizing that Christopher is like worse, because they're like, I'm gonna name my kid Christ, and they're like, you can't do that, that's weird, man, you really can't do that. And he's like, I'll combine it with Gopher. Oh, okay, as long as it's a Christ Gopher. Okay, yeah, that's fine, we're fine with Christ Gopher.
Well, what about Christian? People name their kids Christian.
True.
Which is like naming your kid like fucking Jewish or Muslim.
I'm gonna name my kid Christ. We already said you can't do that. I'll combine it with Venetian blinds. All right, Christian. I would drop the blinds though.
But I mean, that's yeah. Anyway, where was I? You've derailed.
Here's my little daughter, Jewish.
Right? Like that's just
that's a bit on the nose, Saul. Was that a Jewish
Shlomo?
nose joke?
Oh, no.
Shlomo. I haven't met a good Shlomo in a while.
I had a friend who dated a Shlomo, and I swear to God, I could never say his name with a straight face. Every time I saw the dude, I was like, hey, there.
Dude, I went through 16 years of religious school. I never met a Shlomo.
Ah, God, you missed... Well, granted, this wasn't at a religious school. This was, like, out in the world. But there are Shlomos who walk among us.
Do they walk a little slower?
All right,
like, here's me in Shlomo.
Okay, you're cut off. You're cut off.
Dude, if I were named Shlomo, I would have spent my entire youth being like, every time I, dunk a basketball, I'd be like, all right, here it is in Shlomo, and I just like redo it. And everybody's like, dude, if that kid doesn't shut the fuck up.
Yeah, and this is why you'd probably have been, beaten to death by your peers at the age of 15.
It came close anyway.
Moral of the story, folks, please don't name your child Shlomo. It's just, yeah.
When I saw we were getting into the crackdown on abortion across the country, I was like, oh, God, there's going to be a lot of Shlomo jokes.
Speaking of which, Shana Tova, everyone. Happy New Year.
Shana Tova.
Whatever.
You forgot the le, which means two. So to a good year.
Why can't I just say good year?
Because people don't do that.
People say
Why can't I just name my kid Christ?
Happy New Year. They don't say to a Happy New Year.
L'shana tova. Yeah. See, you got to have the le.
Okay. You know what? Whatever. I'm going to keep saying Shana Tova, and you can't stop me because this is my interpretation of the religion. So,
See, but I went to high school with Shana Tova, and then I'm going to think you're talking about her.
Okay. Finally here, before we really, just continue down this ridiculous rabbit hole. TRAP restrictions, which are targeted regulations of abortion providers. This is the laws that like make that they have to have the ability to, get people to the emergency room. They have to have,
Right.
doors that are this wide. They've got to get, all of this gear, all of this, extremely expensive medical gear for their abortion clinics, even though it's
have to have
not at all necessary. And in fact, abortions
Right.
are statistically safer than getting a shot of penicillin.
Yep. And they basically came up with all this shit that it's nearly impossible to get. I mean, having both access to a hospital like in the immediate vicinity and having your own ambulance. Like, ambulances are phenomenally expensive. It's like buying, several Porsches or whatever. Like, it's crazy. But they wanted them to have this thing that they would never use because they never fucking need it, because giving an abortion is very safe. And yet they were forcing them to have, like, it's just so fucking ridiculous. It's like, you have to have a helipad on top of your clinic to, rush women to the hospital that they'll never need.
Right. It's getting an abortion is a lot safer than giving birth. Like, a lot.
Well, unless nowadays it's going to be done in back alleys, and then it won't be as safe.
Right. And I think, you touched upon another point that I wanted to bring up, including myself. Every person that I've talked to has had an abortion. It was never a question of whether this was going to happen. It was a question of whether I can do this safely. Now, thankfully, in my case, I was in California and I had access to, really great doctors and, really great care. But this is, and I have a friend who also does the reproductive telehealth, and she says she hears the most heartbreaking questions, like, let me tell you what I have under my kitchen sink, and you tell me if I can.
So I have a big tube of bleach. Trump said that'll work, right?
Right. So the question is never whether we will take control of our own bodies. The question is only, can we do it safely? And so I think that's another important thing to highlight, and also point out that this has never had anything to do with, protecting babies or anything like that. It's about control over women's bodies. This is all patriarchy down to this is through and through. And actually there was a recent, I can't remember where it was, but there was a recent interview that happened on, probably Fox News or something. But literally the dude would not say like women or pregnant people. He referred to them as host bodies.
Stop.
Yeah, no, I'm serious.
Like some sort of alien encounter?
Yeah. Yeah.
Jesus.
So
dude, he got that straight out of Handmaid's Tale. He really did.
So yeah, important to highlight that.
Host body. Mm-hmm. I'd like to introduce my long-term host body, Charisse. She's here.
Yeah. So real quick, I just wanted to share. I'm just going to run through these real quick, but you can find the complete list, including a description of each one and, whether they have a 24/7 hotline, a text line, etc. I got this list over at Shout Your Abortion. That's on Instagram at Shout Your Abortion. You can also just, Google them. They've got other social media sites. But these are abortion funds who could definitely use the support right now because, of course, people will need to go out of state to get the reproductive health care that they need, in which case, of course, because if you haven't noticed, Texas is fucking ginormous. So, it's not like we're talking about Delaware here. So people will need to travel further.
When we decided to steal that land area, we were like, go big or go home.
So yeah, just real quick here, just a 15 abortion funds and folks who work on reproductive rights that you can donate to and get more information. If you are someone in need, if you're in Texas listening to this, you can reach out to these folks as well. One is Jane's Due Process. The other one is Texas Equal Access Fund. We got Frontera Fund, West Fund, Buckle Bunnies, which I just like the alliteration of that.
What the hell is that name?
I don't know, but I love it. The next one is Support Your Sistas Fund, spelled SISTAHS. The next one is the Lilith Fund. Next one is Fund Texas Choice. The Bridge Collective. Clinic Access Support Network, Indigenous Women Rising, which is specific to Indigenous folks who need help paying for an abortion, the National Abortion Federation, and then we've got the big obvious one, Planned Parenthood, and I recommend looking into any of those, particularly if you're somebody in need. Sometimes the big ones like Planned Parenthood can't really offer you support because they're just too big and they're overflowing. So it might behoove you, if you are in need, to look at some of the other ones. And again, that you can find that list over at Shout Your Abortion on Instagram.
Yeah. Well, that's great. There's all those services, but God, medical, I know it's already a thing, but so you can have abortion tourism becoming just like a massive industry, trying to get everybody out of states that are becoming fucking right-wing hellholes and into states that will help them out. And then you have medical tourism in this country as well, where people are flying to other countries to have procedures done. So yeah, it'd be good for tourism, I guess, like fucking airlines and car services will be doing better.
Thanks for the silver lining, Lee.
Yeah. There's the capitalist silver lining.
And speaking of medical tourism and also people that should, I'd say guillotined, but I feel like this would be too fast. Tortured slowly. Yeah.
People that should be adult aborted.
Yes. Forced to listen to like Taylor Swift for like 60 hours straight in the dark with, flashing strobe lights.
While they're paper cut to death.
Exactly. So this came just a few days ago. A bankruptcy court has granted the Sackler family, they're the family who owns Purdue Pharma, which are the ones who created oxycodone, and is basically the creators of the opioid crisis. A bankruptcy court granted the Sacklers immunity from all future opioid lawsuits. So, yeah, if you were hoping to sue them for murdering thousands of people, the window is closed.
It's fucking incredible. So the estimates are that 600,000 Americans have died from opioid overdoses since the Sacklers basically helped start the opioid epidemic. Other pharmaceuticals have gotten in on the game, but the whole, we're going to give you pills of basically something, 80 or 100 times or whatever it is, more powerful than morphine. And yeah, everyone will be fine. And we'll tell the doctors that it's not addictive. And we'll tell the patients that it's not addictive and it's fine. And all that would be great. And then as the bodies are piling up, they're still finding new ways to tell doctors to keep pushing these pills. And they know the bodies are piling up. And they fucking keep doing it through the 90s, through the early 2000s. And basically it only stops when it becomes a national story in the late, 20 teens. And now that we found out for sure that these people are not actually going to suffer many repercussions. Purdue Pharma has been forced into bankruptcy or whatever and will be sold. But the Sacklers will be multi-billionaires and their lives will be fine and great and wonderful.
Well, yeah, and that's one of the things is that throughout the legal process, the Sacklers, who, by the way, are one of the wealthiest families in the world, never admitted to
They're philanthropists.
Right. They never admitted to any wrongdoing, so they've never been charged with any like personal accountability or personal blame for this situation, despite the whole scenario that you just laid out, Lee. And so, as part of this quote unquote settlement, they're being asked to pay $4 billion, which sounds a lot to you and me, who struggle over God, I don't know if I can afford like the $2,500 a month in rent. But for these assholes who made more than $10 billion from opioid sales alone, so that's not including all of the other medical supplies and medicine that Purdue Pharma created.
Right.
That's just fucking opioids. So they made more than 10 billion, and their, settlement is for 4. And on top of that, they never have to pay, they can't ever be sued again. And it's not just for them. It grants their hundreds of their associates and their remaining companies. So Purdue's going to be, sold off and it's bankrupt, but they still own other companies. So those companies are released from any liability or any harm that would be, brought up against the opioid crisis or the opioid drugs. So this is fucking ridiculous. Literally, like mass murderers being, sent off on a sunlit, the sun's going down and they're just going off on a cruise off into the waters, and we're waving them off while people are dying of fucking opioid abuse in the background. That's what this is. That is this scenario.
And if you split that, whatever it is, $4 billion or something up for settlements, you got 600,000 families who have lost someone. Like, what are they going to get? Here's $1,000. Hope that replaces your son. Right. It's going to be fucking stupid. And that's if they get any money at all. I'm sure there's going to be plenty that don't get any money. I'm sure there's going to be plenty who've had their lives destroyed. We talk about deaths because that's the most obvious, like, holy shit impact. But how many of these families and people have their lives destroyed but haven't died? So it's like They were told they wouldn't get addicted, they get addicted, they had addiction problems before that, and their fucking whole lives turned upside down, and they don't die, they just had their lives destroyed. And it's like, well, no one cares about that.
Right. So, and the I don't know if it was the decision or if it was some article, but like they were saying that, the $4 billion is going to be used for to go back to communities who have been destroyed by the opioid epidemic. And I'm like, what? Okay. I think you don't understand how much $4 billion is. When you stretch, we're not talking about one fucking town, okay? Like, even in one town, you would need that much to build up an infrastructure to deal with, this addiction crisis, to address, because this has affected every aspect of people's lives, right? Their ability to work, their ability to be, a member of their families and of their communities, their ability to just, remain safe in terms of physical and mental and emotional health. This affects absolutely everything. So even if it was just like, let's say there was just one fucking community in like West Virginia, which is the state that leads the nation in opioid deaths.
Yep.
Even if it was just one little fucking town in West Virginia, you would need at least $4 billion to address the fallout of the opioid crisis. So this is a fucking joke that $4 billion is supposed to address community issues with the opioid crisis across the United States. Go fuck yourself.
And if anybody, it was a while ago, but I covered it on Redacted tonight. They released little portions of the deposition video of Richard Sackler, and it's fucking hysterical. These sociopaths, like, he kept being asked if he, like, how many companies he owns, because a lot of this has to do with, like, did he know what was going on in certain companies and stuff like that? And he'd be like, no, I don't know how many companies. And they'd be like, you own 67. And he'd be like, okay, if you say so. And then they'd be like, have you heard of this company? He's like, I've heard of it. I don't know much about it. And they were like, then is it a surprise that you're listed as the CEO of that company? And he'd be like, okay, if you say so. And it's like, You don't know that you're the CEO of a. I mean, it's fucking amazing. These sociopaths just and in any other crime, like some low level crime, stealing a car or something, if they were being grilled by lawyers in a court of law or whatever, or by the cops pressuring them, being like, have you seen this car before? No, I've never seen it before. Would it surprise you that you own this car? Oh yeah, that would shock me. Would it surprise you that here's a photo of you driving this car? Would that surprise you? Oh, okay, if you say so. Like, they would fucking rail that guy. He'd be serving, fucking 20 years for stealing that car. It doesn't matter what he said to them. But instead, when it's a rich man dealing with rich man crimes, then, he said he didn't know.
Well, the basically how it works is the more people you kill, like if you get over, like, I'd say 100, then they're just like, look, man, maybe we could learn something from you. So we're gonna treat you with kid gloves because shit, that's impressive.
Good on you, sir. Good on you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I tip my hat to you, sir. I need to go get a hat to tip it right now. You stay here. I'll be right back.
Yeah. So, America.
America! We need a button that we could push. This goes, America!
Speaking of oodles of money going to things that they really shouldn't, the House panel last week approved a $37.5 billion boost to the Pentagon budget.
Hey, wait, listen. We're hard on the Pentagon, but they have barely been scraping by. Okay? I heard that most of the soldiers don't have shoes. Soldiers have been forced to have their underwear made out of MRAPs. They're out of underwear. So yeah, it's been rough times. They've been eating mainly bullets, just leftover ammunition, because there's nothing to eat.
Lean times for everyone. At a moment when millions are facing eviction, when the measly ass unemployment benefits that people had are ending, this House of Reps panel on Wednesday approved a $37.5 billion increase to the Pentagon budget from last year without the Pentagon ever asking for it. So I think this is also important to note. The Pentagon doesn't ask for more money. They just get it. Can you imagine getting more money from the government when you're not asking for it? What the fuck would that feel like?
I know, people begged for years. I mean, remember Jon Stewart devoted his part of his on Daily Show career, and then 8 years or whatever, 6 years after his Daily Show career, to getting money, money for first responders who were dying of cancer from 9/11. Mm-hmm. And he just devoted himself, spent all day, every day trying to shame Congress and all this shit. And meanwhile, Congress is just Pentagon, here's billions for the Pentagon. They didn't even ask for it. Yeah, they said don't send us anymore because we don't know where to put it. Just send it to them. Just leave it on their doorstep. They'll find somewhere.
No, it's fucking remarkable. And
of course, we don't know where any of this money goes. People are probably tired of me yelling about this, but they finally were audited multiple times. 1,000 auditors went into the Pentagon to find out where all the money's going. And after a year, the Pentagon just came out and said, yeah, big announcement, we failed our audit. And that was the end of it.
Well, yeah, and I think, this is how it works for those government audits. I mean, I wrote an article earlier this year that talked about housing audits and how many housing authorities fail their audits. And then, when I called HUD and asked for a statement about, okay, so what happens? Do you do anything? Do you give them a list of things to say, hey, you need to do better with I don't know, providing people with housing because that's your fucking charge? HUD responded with some, literally their response to me was talking about some bumfuck housing authority in Idaho that was building new buildings. And I'm I feel like you responded to the wrong email.
Yeah, they were the housing authority in Idaho has been working very hard. And I think that maybe they just got to the point they were like, we can't answer any questions, so let's just send them nonsense. And then they won't be able to say HUD refused to respond, but they won't want to print the nonsense because it's confusing to people. So yeah, just like do a Mad Libs and just send that.
But they underestimated my ability to weave in nonsense to my articles.
Yeah, you did have an excellent article.
Well, I mean, because it's and this is just so classic, right? Like if you or I get a letter from the IRS and they're like, "Hey, we're auditing you because your taxes look funny," they're not going to let go, right? It's like a fucking.
You can't just say I built something in Idaho.
You know, maybe I should try that. Look, I got a tiny house in Idaho that's doing really well, and I just want you to know that. But yeah, like you can't, like it's like a fucking gator. Like they will not let go of you. And yet these housing authorities, or, you know, the Pentagon, which is even more egregious, but the housing authorities, we're talking billions of dollars that they're like, yeah, that's, and you're like, I'm sorry, what did you do with it? And somehow that's fucking okay. And yet, like, I forget to mention that I, you know, took a $50 fucking Uber one time and I get audited. Like, wow.
Where did all the money go? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Basically.
Well, you know what? I think our job is done here. Let's head out, guys.
We've done all we can do.
Yeah. Fucking incredible. $37.5 billion, which is, that's the extra that the House panel wants to throw at the Pentagon that they haven't asked for. And that is more than the entire back rent owed by everybody across America that might get evicted now that the moratorium is going to be up. Meaning, if they just stopped throwing extra money at the Pentagon and gave it and raised everyone's back rent, they could do that easy.
Yeah. Well, that requires a shuffling of priorities that, yeah. Yes, it kind of like in line. Sorry, this is just like an episode of like hitting you with like really shitty news, but you know, such is the world we're living in.
That's our job. That's what we specialize in.
Last week we spoke about the aftermath of Hurricane Ida, which is of course still ongoing. So I've shared on my Instagram page. I'm going to continue to share resources for folks and places where people can donate. I will say again, do not donate to the fucking Red Cross. Donate to grassroots organizations, like, you know, the Common Ground movement in New Orleans, which is the one that Scott Crow helped to co-found after Katrina. In 2005. So these are grassroots organizations that are actually like in the neighborhoods where they're actually needed. And these are the folks that you should be donating to. There's also a list that I posted about indigenous support, because of course a lot of the indigenous peoples in these areas in southern Louisiana are the most at risk because they have the least resources. So keep checking that out. But I think, you know, something that's also like, it's just seriously, I fucking like, if somebody wrote this into a fucking script, I would read it and be like, this is absurd. Stop it. Yeah. But, you know, right as like a couple weeks after Hurricane Ida hits New Orleans, the second worst storm in Louisiana's history, the Biden administration announced that they're opening up 80 million acres in the Gulf of Mexico for oil drilling. I will repeat that.
Incredible.
80 million acres in the Gulf of Mexico, which is, by the way, where a few months ago, remember, like the you know, the eye of the devil, like the eye of Sauron fucking opened up in the middle of the fucking Gulf, that giant burning eye.
The devil's lava anus. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
But luckily there have not been any oil spills in the Gulf of Mexico. So that's, you know, fingers crossed. Fingers crossed on that one. Actually, I just wanted to give a shout out to my other show, Government Secrets. And I don't normally repeat topics, but this, I'm not going to get into all the details, but on Government Secrets, I went through how exactly the U.S. government, including the Bush administration and the governor in Louisiana and many other people in Louisiana, all knew that a hurricane would cause immense flooding in New Orleans before Katrina, because the oil companies 50 years earlier had pressured the Army Corps of Engineers to build a giant channel that was basically a fucking red carpet highway straight into New Orleans. And there were hurricane specialists, storm specialists who were raising the alert, trying to talk to everyone, trying to tell them that you've got to plug up this canal, which is basically just a straight shot for a hurricane. And no one listened. And in fact, their department was defunded.
Yeah.
So Katrina was not a surprise.
No. Not to the people who fucking were paying attention and trying to... Did we have this conversation privately, or did we have this conversation on the podcast? I don't feel like I remember anymore. But
I think it was just a phone call.
Okay, well then I'll share this musing with all of our listeners. Isn't this the plot of like every fucking, natural disaster film? Whether it's a fucking like tornado, or whether it's the volcano's about to erupt, or the day after tomorrow where the fucking Statue of Liberty ends up like, neck deep in fucking snow. There's always some scientist running around being like, look, Mr. President, you don't understand. And Mr. President's like, look, son, I do understand. You don't understand. This is America. And you're like, God, I hate that guy. And then you look at the news and you're like, this is the exact same fucking plot line.
So now I'm remembering the genesis of this comedic idea. You said there was a volcano. I was saying like the scientist was running around with his hair on fire, and you said, oh, that was the plot to that volcano movie. And I was like, there were multiple volcano movies where that was the plot. And then I was like, oh, wait, that's also the plot to like half of all movies that involve science. Like Day After Tomorrow, fucking Independence Day, Jurassic Park. It's always a scientist, usually Jeff Goldblum, running around saying, we're going to be fucked. And no one listens.
Yeah, and then you're like watching that, eating popcorn, and then you're like, oh wow, man, that's so crazy. And do you ever just then like stop to think about that's the world you're living in?
Yep, that's what they're doing right now with climate change, and no one gives a shit. It's what they're doing with factory farming, the harms of it environmentally, and nobody's listening. And you can go down the list, but yeah, scientists, hair on fire. Everybody else, shut up, nerdery. Yeah. Excuse me, let me call the Nerdery Republic.
So there is a lawsuit. Earth Justice filed a lawsuit in federal court in D.C. on behalf of Healthy Gulf, Sierra Club, Friends of the Earth, and the Center for Biological Diversity. It was filed against Secretary of the Interior, Deb Haaland, and the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, following the notice of this lease sale 257. And you can, if you go to Earth Justice, if you want, you can check out the legal document itself, and you can, sign up to stay up to date on this. But this, while I think it's very important to keep badgering these issues in courts, because sometimes we do get, if not, small victories, we do get postponements of things. But again, like I kind of harp on incessantly, direct action is the answer to this. There's no way to appeal to these people, because if there were, then you'd think that 2 weeks after the second largest storm in the history of a state hits due to climate change, they wouldn't be like, meh, you know what we need more of? We need more climate change. I'd like more climate change, please. So,
and the power will likely be out for weeks, possibly a month or something.
Absolutely.
In New Orleans for hundreds of thousands, or maybe it's millions of people. And there are, I might try and cover it on a redacted or something, but Greg Palast has also done reporting on how that has to do with these fucking awful electric companies choosing not to actually prepare for these type of things because they know they can get more money by scamming people rather than actually preparing for this stuff.
Yeah, and as we spoke about last week, the intersections of like infrastructure, and you can actually bolster your home places against this kind of barrage of climate chaos. 2/3 of the people in the United States live within 100 miles of the coasts. So the quote unquote borders, but it's just so to suggest that we can't do anything about this and we should just let it happen. Well, that's fatalistic. It's nihilistic, and it's also just plain fucking wrong. The amount of money it would take to build, for instance, a seawall in New York City so that you wouldn't have the apocalyptic fucking videos that some of you might have seen of the subway looking like some kind of fucked up water world. You could build a seawall to address that, and it would literally cost less than, I think like a handful of hedge fund managers make in a week. So you can definitely address these issues, just even if you were just talking about mitigating, the effects of climate chaos. But that's also not something that is being addressed in the current infrastructure bill, or infrastructure conversations in general in Congress that I'm aware of.
Yeah, and there's other aspects of infrastructure, more unique technological advances that if we were actually living like sophisticated fucking adults, if we as a nation were adulting, we would realize things like hydroponic farming uses something like 95% less water and zero soil, and you can grow the vegetables and foods in the actual area where the people eat them rather than shipping them from fucking Guam. So, rather than allowing your mango to have a jet-setting vacation before it arrives at your plate, maybe that would save a lot in terms of, oil expenditures, money, fucking other pollution, effort and work by laborers. And this isn't saying that, there shouldn't be any real farms out there. There obviously should, but in order to feed this massive growing population, it would make sense to deal with that. It would make sense to have better infrastructure so you aren't throwing out 40% of all food. There's so many steps that infrastructure could be taking. You could be 3D printing fucking tiny homes for every person that needs one. Yep. There's so many sophisticated ways that infrastructure could be growing right now. And instead, it's like, oh, we have 60,000 collapsing bridges. We'll put $1 million for rolls of duct tape that you can go around and really just solidify those, and all will be well.
Wait, so you're saying we can't fix this with duct tape?
I don't even know if we can fix Joe Biden with duct tape. Like, you could use a roll or two on him and he would still be falling over.
We had a saying in the studio that's the kind of stupid that even duct tape can't fix. So, yeah, there you go.
Are we, oh no, we got one. Do you want to squeeze this last one in here?
That's what she said.
I'd hate to know what that day was like.
Hey, that's to each their own. Okay, so this last one.
That's what guys on a porn set do not want to hear. To each their own. Wait, no.
We're all good here. Thank you. So this is, kind of, we'll leave you with a kind of broader commentary on capitalism in general. Like basically the concept of capitalism is when the capitalists, and by that I mean like the actual capitalists, not people who are brainwashed and for some reason enjoy capitalism, but like the people who are well aware of what capitalism is and make bank off of it and therefore love it. The economy does well when they do well and everyone else suffers. The majority of humans suffer. So, for instance, this is a perfect example of that. Biden very proudly announced on Twitter last week that, quote, "We are now the only developed country in the world whose economy is bigger than it was before the pandemic. Our economic plan is working," end quote. So,
Yeehaw.
first of all, I think it's just psychotic to say that your economy's doing really well when 1,500 people a day are dying. So that's the first issue.
That's just from COVID. That's not even opioid epidemic.
Right. Or like heart disease or, getting hit in a crosswalk or something. On top of that, 35 million people are losing aid. That's jobless aid. And millions are already in the throes of eviction. The homeless crisis is, worse than it was in the Great Depression. But our economy on paper is doing amazing. So just
because we only measure how much billionaires are exploiting people, and
Right.
that means the economy's doing great. The stock market does well when workers are extremely exploited. The stock market does more poorly when workers get rights and things, because it's not measuring whether people are happy, whether people have good lives. That's not what it does. So yeah, like I've always said, using the stock market to measure our society is like measuring the health of a dying man by looking at the leeches on his skin.
I love
and
that.
saying, "Oh, they look healthy." So
I love that.
It's fucking ridiculous. And this actually goes to something that not a lot of people paid attention to, but a few years ago, Goldman Sachs, I think it was, one of the big investment firms, a leaked memo came out basically saying that we have a plutonomy, or we're headed towards a plutonomy. So plutocracy is ruled by the wealthy. Plutonomy is an economy that basically just function by what the wealthy do. So meaning Goldman Sachs, one of the richest investment firms in the fucking world, was telling their rich investors, it's no longer going to matter much whether the guy, goes to the store and whether he's driving his car and pumping gas, and like those type of things in the economy aren't going to matter much anymore. All that's going to matter is whether billionaires are, buying up companies, buying up yachts, like the vast, it's such a large amount of the money circulating in society will come from just a tiny handful, 0.01% of these rich fucks, that we won't have to care much whether the person is buying stuff at the store anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. So when they say that the economy is doing well, just know that they don't mean you. You are not doing well, and that's why the economy is doing well.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that is our show. Next week, we're going to bring you a special episode focused mostly on the anniversaries of Occupy and 9/11. It will be the 10th anniversary of Occupy, September 17th, and the 20th anniversary of 9/11 on September 11th. So, yeah, we're going to be chatting about those next week. And if you feel like you got $1 worth out of this show, please go to liberapay.com/LeeCamp, LIBERAPAY.com/LeeCamp. And there's a Hard Road of Hope special, right? Or is that...
There
done?
is. Well, actually, no. It ended. But there is actually now it's even more special because basically until the end of October, I've partnered with The Real News to offer the documentary for free via their YouTube channel. Ooh. So y'all can just go watch this thing for free for the first time until the end of October. So grab some popcorn and make it a movie night, and you can find that. You can find that via the Real News YouTube channel. I've also posted about it, so you can find it on my pages as well.
And just to be clear, this is not a road. This is Eleanor's award-winning documentary.
If you haven't, if you were
looking for a road.
Well, it's a journey, Lee. The film is a journey. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'd
So
say.
yeah, that's with the real news. And then our project together, radindiemedia.com. If you haven't checked it out yet, what the fuck's the matter with you? But I'm cool. I'm chill. I'm cool. I'm okay. I'm okay. No, I'd like to stay. I'd like to stay here. I'm fine. Rad Indie Media, RADINDIE media.com. You can get your news there every day. It's like your daily digital newspaper that's not propaganda bullshit. So, yeah. And Eleanor's album, No Solo, if you haven't checked it out, fucking do it. It's at artkillingapathy.com. You can get it there. You can take a listen on Spotify, but if you want to support artists at all, do not just go through Spotify. Go to artkillingapathy.com. And you have a live show coming up, right?
I do. For those in the Virginia area, I'll be doing a screening of Hard Road of Hope on October 7th. I'll also be playing some songs. This is put on in conjunction with Appalachian Voices, Artivism Virginia, and Wild Virginia. So this will be a great event. It'll be outdoors, and we're going to have an Eventbrite open for you as well. It also will be digital, so because we can't have too many folks clustered, you will need to provide a proof of vaccination if you'd like to come with us in person. But you can also join via online, and we'll have that set up. So keep your eye on our social media. That's the Royal We on our social media pages for more information.
And lastly, I have a live show with Graham Elwood, live taping of Government Secrets in Los Angeles, September 18th, coming up. You can get tickets at leecamp.com. Just click on the schedule tab. That's September 18th. It's like a 3 p.m. show, afternoon, matinee, as they call it, because we're matinee idols. That means you're not as attractive, right? Anyway.
I don't know. Does it?
I always thought that was the point of when people say he has the matinee idol good looks.
I've never heard that.
He's not. You never heard the expression matinee idol?
No.
Oh, I might have the meaning slightly off, but I thought it meant like he's attractive, but he's not a Hollywood star. He's just he's the low level.
Okay, well, that's all right.
All right, I'm looking it up. It's happening.
No, we're going to sign off. We're going to let people go. We don't need to do that. We don't need to drag this out.
Right.
Until next time, folks, stay safe and act out.
Keep fighting.